Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all who have joined us for our first AMA in our new AMA series. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Alex, Head of Transparency at the Aragon Project. And today I'm really excited for the discussion that we're going to be having with Uma. I'm delighted to say that we have Chandler and Clayton from the Uma project, and we've got Ramon, Aragon's head of product. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some great questions throughout, and hopefully by the end, you'll know all about Uma, what a KPI option is, and the opportunities they open up to communities, along with why Aragon is using KPI options. So for those of you that don't know, UMA enables anyone to build decentralized financial products. UMA's mission is to make financial markets universally accessible. And why are we discussing it? You will have seen that Aragon has launched a suite of new products last week, one of them being Aragon Govern. For those of you that don't know, Aragon Govern is optimistic governance for your DAO. It's a pioneering framework for frictionless DAO governance with on-chain execution and plug-in dispute resolution. Just whilst we're here, as we go along, any questions you have, you can either add them into the YouTube channel, or you can add them into the the link that you will see in the chat. Best question, we have a few exclusive NFTs, so we will pick the best questions and announce the winners tomorrow. And just whilst we're here as well, remember to like and subscribe to YouTube to make sure you get notified every time we have one of these calls. So without further ado, I will welcome up Ramon, Chandler, and Clayton to the stage. I'll let you all share. Welcome, Ron, welcome, Chandler, and welcome, Clayton. Thank you all very much for joining. Before we kick off with the AMA, I encourage everyone to ask as many questions as you have. It would be great, Chandler and Clayton, if you can introduce yourselves and maybe just talk over the UMA project and what the vision is and the sort of the mission of UMA is. And then Ramon, it would be great to hear afterwards a bit about you and why we're here and talking about Aragon Govern.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Alex. I'm Chandler. I am the growth strategist at UMA. I've been working with Ramon for some time on this project. A little quick introduction, at least my interpretation of what UMA does. We build a financial contract layer, which we'll talk about the KPI options as one example of that financial contract layer. That enables people to create different types of financial products. And as the other element behind creating financial products is an enforcement layer or a resolution layer, very similar to what Aragon's been building themselves. We just specifically have our use case tailored to these financial contracts, and that's what we call our dispute resolution layer, which comprises of quite a few things, one of them being an Oracle type service. So UMA, kind of broadly speaking, is building functionality in those two spaces.
And my name is Clayton Roche, and I'm the community lead at UMA. And Chandler's introduction was really quite awesome and concise, and well, really have a whole lot to add to it. The only other framing of it that I've always liked is that we basically allow for payouts based on states of the world. And so what that means is there's some future event, someone locks up an amount of money, and we're able to check on the state of the world, whether that's the price of corn, whether a rocket ship landed up, returned to Earth safely, or whether it's a state of the world about how many DAOs have transitioned from V1 to V2. We're able to design a financial contract and then have it pay out based on a certain outcome in predictable terms. So it's just tokenized financial contracts.
Brilliant. Ramon.
I should have asked Chandler to summarize Aragon as well, and me as well. It was pretty good. Well, I'm Ramon, leading product at Aragon, been here a few times already. and talking a little bit about Govern in this context of UMA as well. As you guys already know, Govern is this new approach towards decentralized governance, this optimistic approach where we created a framework to be able to run your organization sort of like in the real world, where decisions are made in a more frictionless, fast way, and then people can just challenge these decisions if they don't agree. We just released Govern. In order to incentivize people to test Govern, we team up with UMA, with the KPI options, to create this structure where the more DAOs that started trying out migrating from Aragon Client to Aragon Govern, the more DAOs do that, the more this KPI option will be valued, and the more options you receive, meaning that in the end, the more ANT the option will be converted to ANT, the more ANT you will have. Of course, I'm summarizing in the worst possible way because we are going to explain this a little bit better. But the main concept here, and why we love it so much, this idea of the KPI option, is really being able to attach a goal, an objective that can be reached by the effort of many people working on that towards a common goal, and attach this to rewards. And the more you work towards that goal and the more you achieve that goal, the more you are rewarded by that, which is like something should be something more common in the traditional world, but it's something quite common with OKRs, for example, and we really want to bring that into this decentralized world as well. How can we make a whole community work towards a goal, and the more you achieve the goal, the more you are rewarded by that. So it's like an awesome idea in the end that we really enjoy, and say, hey, let's try this out. Let's do this partnership for sure.
Brilliant, thank you all. So let's jump into Q&A. We have a list of questions already as well from those who have submitted the type form. So thank you everyone who's already added your questions. So for the UMA team, I suppose just a few questions around it. I suppose, and maybe you can go into a bit more detail around actually what is a synthetic asset. And sort of what are priceless financial contracts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so a synthetic asset is just one way that you can use UMA's financial contracts. And what it actually ends up being is, I want to create an asset that tracks something else synthetically without ever actually having to create a token that represents that. So a nice way to kind of think about it is in the way of like how you could use UMA is, you could create a token that tracks the price of gas at any point in time, and this synthetic token could increase or decrease in value depending on whether the gas prices go up or down. And that's very broadly speaking one way of creating a synthetic asset. The next question that normally people ask is, why would you want to do that? Well, if you are a person that wants to kind of use a lot of gas in your protocol, gas prices go up and down, and you want to have a more fixed cost on how you price gas in the way that you want to use it, you can use one of these instruments to hedge out these synthetic assets, to hedge out some of the gas price risk that you might be exposed to in the future. And this allows you to budget a bit more efficiently. It allows you to be a bit more effective in how you manage that future cost. Now, gas synthetics is one example. You can actually create a synthetic on any type of price identifier out there, whether it be what the temperature in Berlin is at any given point in time. Clayton gave an example. You can create a synthetic asset that tracks whether SpaceX rocket launches are successful or not. And with that, you can kind of create SpaceX insurance and rocket insurance, which is kind of cool. So you can build out these financial products and instruments with these synthetic tokens that track underlying price movements of something else in the real world.
Next question is, I suppose, so it's following on to that, I suppose, do you foresee KPI options sort of becoming an engine for Web3?
KPI options are, I might need a little bit more background for that question. What would that mean exactly? Specifically on Web3? Yeah.
I suppose more, do you see sort of these synthetic financial assets becoming the engine for Web3, if that makes sense? Do you foresee it being sort of the de facto way of communities creating financial assets?
So, I mean, so KPI options are, you know, kind of a particular, they're almost just like a particular framing of these financial contracts. And so KPI options in particular are exactly as they're being used by Aragon. They're an incentive mechanism. And so the reason we sort of call them that is because most of the time that you would, these would actually just sort of be payouts like a gift, as opposed to a synthetic asset, which would be more like you'd have somebody on each side, right? Somebody who's long and somebody who's short, and you'd have kind of a market and people would buy in on both sides. The reason I'm clarifying that is just that, like, so there's one direction we can go at UMA, which is around like building out these synthetic assets. And then the KPI options piece in particular has been useful for this incentive, from this incentive perspective. We would love to continue to be like more well used in this Web3 adoption stage. It's been particularly useful with community building. People seem to respond really well to this type of incentive. Basically, it's an opportunity for people to work together to achieve a singular outcome. So I absolutely think that it could be extremely effective for, particularly for Web3 implementations, where you can have you know, people participating and working together and having permissionless access. Chandler, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of also think of it as a rewards 2.0 or an incentivization mechanism 2.0 designed for Web3 using Web3 tech, like natively. The other way that you can kind of think of it is when you give out rewards, and in DeFi and kind of decentralized finance, rewards just get thrown around like, without any incentivization behind them, without any kind of thought on what the repercussions from it. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, if you just gave all your employees like their entire salary in 1 year, for 1 year in one payment, that's like a bad outcome. We know this, right? So why do we think that like community building and community incentivization mechanisms would work in the exact same way if you just airdrop a whole bunch of tokens? What you instead do is you kind of build up this like longer term payment run where you can actually maybe give out more rewards to the community. You can have it so that those rewards align with what the DAO themselves want to try and push. And so the community is now working alongside the DAO and pushing the DAO in its own direction with like aligned incentives. And in this way, rewards become a lot more powerful and actually just kind of get a group of decentralized people, you know, with one vision that they're looking forward to and kind of working towards and kind of aggregating around.
Fantastic. Next question that we have is around the UMA treasury diversification tools, and is there any expiry on those treasury diversification tools? That's a community question.
Yeah, so just for some context, for anyone who isn't aware, a treasury diversification tool that we created at UMA is just these kind of financial contracts that allow DAOs to do certain things with the assets on their balance sheet, right? Most DAOs they're very long on their token, and they maybe want to borrow funds against the tokens that they have in their treasury and use them to pay developers and bounties and kind of the team, or they want to diversify their balance sheet so they don't only hold their own token, they hold an amalgamation of other tokens. So these are very typical like financial products, whether you can like use what we're calling the range token and the success token. Very broadly speaking, they just allow you to transfer under certain terms your balance sheet into other assets, and you get money today and the payout happens in the future. You, as the person setting up the one of these treasury management tools, will choose a variety of parameters, and of which one would be the expiry, and so you can set that for 1 year, 1 month, 2 years, 3 years, whatever you want to do. And you can kind of think of these as in traditional finance, if you take a home loan, right? Most of the home loans are set for 10 years. At some point in the future, the home loan will end because you'll either pay back the entire debt, or you can pay it back, in a shorter time, but that's kind of not really relevant to this discussion. But there is an expiry, long story short.
And just to clarify one quick thing, which is that like expiry really just means when that asset is sort of like redeemable for the underlying collateral. The actual like that redemption process is always open. So if you ever like bought these treasury diversification tools as an investor, your value never actually expires. It's just after that point at which you can claim that value, but they're always redeemable in perpetuity after that.
Brilliant. One more question for the UMA team, Dora Ramon. I'm coming to you in a second. So there was a question around what is UMA's optimistic oracle? Maybe we can just jump on that, and then Ramon, I promise we'll come to you and talk about us as well.
The optimistic oracle is very similar to optimistic govern, and if you look at the similarities between them, they share a lot of the same design patterns. And very simply, our optimistic oracle sits in our dispute resolution layer. So Alex, if you and I get into a financial contract now, and you give me money today, and I promise to give you money and exchange that for money in the future, we've just gone into a financial contract, and the terms of that contract can be whatever it is, right? Let's say I promise to buy a certain amount of ANT from you now today, and you give me the money, or however that exchange works. And in the future, it's time to pay up, and the smart contract executes, but it executes in a way that one of us disagrees with, right? UMA's optimistic oracle will handle that process where, we will propose a price and that this contract will settle at. If that price is accepted, contract settles, no need to kind of do anything. We mentioned priceless financial contracts earlier. This means that the price of that particular asset doesn't need to come on chain at that given point in time. And we're pretty happy with how that contract gets settled. If one of us disputes that, then the optimistic oracle has an escalation game that would be escalated to where UMA token holders would vote on the outcome in a decentralized way to make sure that the price that we arrive to is in accordance with the specification of what we agreed to in the beginning, right? And so that would be how like our optimistic oracle would work.
Fantastic. And that probably leads very well into Ramon. Next question is around what is Aragon Govern, and why is it different from what has come before?
Beautiful. So Aragon Govern, it's mainly a new way to make decisions in this decentralized world, especially in the DAO space. So we are all used to DAOs being this place where you want to do something, you create a proposal, your community vote on that. If the proposal passes, something is executed on chain. Of course, then this creates millions of different types of ways that you can vote, or you can vote off chain, but then you need a human to go there and say, yeah, you voted off chain, this is correct, so let's execute it on chain. Believe in a multi-sig, for example, give the power to the multi-sig. Yeah. Sort of a lot of possibilities, sometimes a mess, sometimes your community is not engaged, you need a lot of people, gas costs, a lot of the problems that we know. So our idea, our concept was, how does it work in traditional organizations in let's call it real world, although everything is real world. You, as an employee of a company, you make decisions on a daily basis to execute your job. And if you make some really bad decisions, at some point, people will point the finger to you, say, hey, he's not doing a good job. Or if it's a too big decision, most likely you don't even have you cannot do it by yourself. So, but you can do a lot of stuff by yourself on the day-to-day. So what we think is, why don't we change this concept of creating proposals and asking for people to vote to just do stuff? And if it's not correct, people can point the finger to you and say, hey, you are not doing the correct thing. So this is sort of the concept behind what we are calling optimistic governance. You go to your DAO, you say, I want to transfer this amount of Ether to this account because I'm paying for some services. I'm paying the UMA guys to develop the KPI option infrastructure for our company because we already discussed about it. Everyone is aware, so I'm just paying. If this was not actually discussed, we have a delay period before something can be executed, sort of cool-off period where people can see that I'm doing that. And if this was not really agreed upon, if I'm trying to steal money from the company, if I'm doing something that goes against the rules of the agreement of the DAO, someone can go there and challenge it and create a dispute. Then we have our dispute resolution layer, which is Aragon Court, where we have guardians, which are ANT holders that wanted to become guardian in Aragon Court, and they will rule upon that decision that I made based on the agreement of the DAO, the reason why I made the decision, and there is a lot of evidence that they can rule upon. Of course, the guardians do not know each other, so they are randomly based on an algorithm, but they are randomly picked for that case, and they can rule if what I was doing is actually against the agreement or it's okay what I was doing and the person who challenged was just insane or something. But it's basically allowing things to happen in a more faster way, more regular way that we are already used to it. But of course, creating the safeguard mechanisms so people cannot do actually wrong things with your organization. So it's really just go there, hey, I want to do things because it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, someone is going to challenge me. So it's quite similar, as Chandler just explained, to this optimistic oracle, meaning that hopefully, and in general, things will be done in the right way. Is the exceptions that are going to be caught in the dispute resolution layer.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thanks, Ron. And following on from that, obviously, well, this is a whole new framework, and we have built our UMA KPI options. Do you want to just explain a bit of detail on that? And maybe Chandler and Clayton, maybe you can jump in afterwards and just explain how you see what Aragon's done with the KPI option and how you see that in the market. Is it interesting? Is it normal? How you see that?
Awesome. I'm going to explain. Most likely, I'm going to get a lot of things wrong, and then Chandler and Clayton can correct me. So going through the concept, and as a product person, for me, focusing on goals, on objectives, it's part of my job. Product people usually are not focusing in delivering specific solutions, let's say, but we are focusing on delivering some value. When we are able to transform this into something that can be shared with the community, which are the KPI options, what we are doing is, hey, if we reach 1,000 daily active users 1 week from now, everyone gets a reward. Let's imagine that we are a traditional company and we do this in the traditional company. As Chandler was saying, traditional companies do not go there and just give awards out of nowhere, the way we are sort of doing in the crypto space. They have a reason, and they usually have goals towards people get rewards or bonuses. So we say 1 week from now, 1,000 daily active users, everyone gets a reward. If we get only half, 500 daily active users, you get half of the reward. It's linear. Of course, it could be any curve that we would want. People in the company will really start working towards that goal because, well, everyone likes to earn rewards in the end, or almost everyone that I know. So we are transforming this, saying, hey, let's try this out in the decentralized world as well. How can we create goals that a whole community can work towards? And if they reach this goal, we just give them rewards, because in the end, it's good for the community, it's good for the company itself. We know it works. So when we figured out that UMA was developing this, we said, well, first, the concept, awesome. We really want to try it out. How can we start trying this out? And this was the same time that we were developing Aragon Govern. We say a first approach to this is, how can we incentivize our current DAO creators, our current DAO clients, let's say, to try out Govern. So we created a program that if you migrate your Aragon client DAO to an Aragon Govern DAO, and what migrate means you create an Aragon Govern DAO and you send your assets from the Aragon client DAO to the new Aragon Govern DAO. If you do that, you will earn some KPI options. And the amount of options is directly, it's directly proportional to the total amount of assets that you migrated in US dollars, converted to US dollars, of course. We created a program. We said we are going to give, and then I hope I remember the correct numbers, 100K ANT will be allocated for this program. And we are going to issue 1 million options, 1 million KPI options, meaning that the whole 1 million KPI options will be worth the 100K ANT, which means that a single option is worth 0.1 ANT. But this value of the option will only, the maximum value of 0.1 will only happen if $100 million in US dollars are migrated to Aragon governed DAOs. It's a little bit complicated. I should have done a slide about it. If only half of this is migrated, means the option will be worth 0.05 ANT instead of 0.1 ANT. So if you have one DAO, as usually people only have one DAO, and you migrate, let's say, $100 million, you are entitled to 10% of this if you migrate $1 million, $10 million, you are entitled to 10% of the $100 million, that is the total. So you earn 10% of the 1 million options, which is 100K options. At this point in time, these options are worth 0.01 because only 10% of the total volume was migrated. When more DAOs start to migrate as well, the value of the options also increase. So although you hold the same amount of options because you only migrated that amount, your option is valued in a higher ANT price because from your DAO, the more options you will earn. So we said, well, all of this to sort of explain, we said, this is quite an interesting concept. We really want to try this out. And we really want to start doing this much more often with all of our products, all of our projects, getting the community involved and reward the community based on single goals that we are going to create. Hopefully, I was able to sort of give a little bit of context on how this whole thing is going to work.
Yeah, that was great, Roman. I just wanted to comment, Alex had asked us if we thought this was interesting or if the design was unique. And in particular, I like the payout. As I understand, you only earn the KPI option token if you migrate. Is that right?
Yeah.
So exactly. Okay. So the DAOs that never migrate won't earn them. And it's kind of neat with the when you design a KPI option program, you have kind of a couple decision points around when you're rewarding people. So we did one that was an airdrop to 7,000 addresses, and then we did another one that was a much narrower target. What's neat about the way that you're doing it is the condition that the KPI option pays out on is also the condition that you will earn any of them on. So that's actually kind of unique, I think, up until now. And then, it's just, I'm really excited to see how this goes because we're talking about organizations, right? These DAOs. And so they have their own internal decision-making to go on. And so presumably they will weigh the benefits, including kind of this little added piece. So that's kind of neat because you're having you're providing an incentive to an organization, not just an individual. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be neat to see how that trickles down. And then just generally how cool is it that you're providing an incentive for these organizations to teach the other organizations, right? It's hey guys, if we can get this other org to do this action, we're going to earn more. And so then they're inclined to teach, they're inclined to talk about it. There's just an impetus. It's just this psychological benefit, right? And our hope together, between UMA and Aragon is that that's effective, that it creates enough of a incentive for people to take these actions. Chandler, I know you have all kinds of brilliant thoughts on this matter. You've been very intimately involved.
Yeah, I just want to hear Ramon either say 100 million, 1,000, 0.1, multiple of 10 again. And actually just credit to Ramon, you got every single one of those numbers correct. I distinctly remember the numbers a little while ago. And there are all these multiples of 10, which were hard to remember. But we've been designing this for some time. And actually, in fact, the Aragon team, when we first launched our KPI options, were one of the first teams that got up and was hey, cool, we're interested in doing this. This is something we're going to want to kind of create with you guys. And when we were kind of going through the design element from that, I hadn't realized like the critical thing that the Aragon team got right in the beginning was that you have to have a KPI option that's designed where there's qualifying criteria to earn the reward and there's qualifying criteria for the reward to unlock, right? And that's actually something in UMA's system we didn't think about when we first created it. Our design process, and like, you know, obviously as the learning process goes, it's actually quite interesting to see how well designed, like when we were kind of, you know, figuring this out in the beginning, how well the Aragon team kind of brought this together. The other thing that I think is actually quite cool, which I might want to like bring up as a subsequent question, is like, what are some of the other ideas that maybe the other DAOs would want to incentivize for themselves, right? Like, so you got a DAO that migrates. This is something that Aragon's putting up for this reward mechanism. But each individual DAO has the ability to create these KPI options for themselves in an event where, you know, they have their own metrics that they want to try and push and their own communities that they want to try and grow. And these can kind of be as granular as you want or as macro as you want them to be. And kind of that design space is really wide.
Perfect. Yeah, just to complement on that, because you just mentioned a quite important word for product management, which is metrics. Actually, not for product management, for companies in general. If you are doing stuff and you are not measuring, you don't have objectives where you are going with your company, you're doing it wrong, believe me, unless you are a non-profit, but you are still doing it wrong. You should have some sort of metrics. And giving the ability to DAOs, to organizations, to work towards this metric and to get the community to work toward this metric. Any DAO that wants to like increase any number, we want to increase the total amount of assets that we hold, we want to increase daily active members in our Discord channel, wherever, you can create these KPI options and you can distribute to whoever belongs to your community and wants to help achieving this goal. So yeah, it's an awesome mechanism for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you all. That was, Ramon, well done for getting everything right. That was fantastic, because they are not easy numbers to remember. A few questions have come through from the community. I'll summarize them into one for the UMA team. What was the original vision behind UMA? Like, what was the driving factors set UMA up, and what's the sort of plan going forward / new sort of releases that you're thinking of doing going forwards?
So the original conception, which kind of predates my joining the team, I mean, it's kind of baked into the name. It stands for universal market access, and the basic idea with that is it's really kind of pinned on the premise of Ethereum, right, which is permissionless. It's just that Ethereum, if people came to Ethereum and tried to build financial products kind of from scratch, they would kind of have to build UMA each time. So instead, we made a template system where you can create contract types using UMA. And so that was kind of the original conception, is this idea of allowing people to have access to financial markets, such as by synthetic assets that we discussed, right? Because a synthetic asset doesn't require you to go through any of the barriers associated with another market. So you have permissionless access to Ethereum, and then you have the ability to create these asset types that might have barriers to access, and that's your ticket. That's all you really need for access to other markets, and it's now worldwide. So that's kind of the conception right there. Chandler, what would you have to add to that? I also think you might be able to speak better to some of our future developments.
Yeah, and actually nothing's changing in the future developments. We're still going to be working on that. Vision has not deviated all that much from its original conception. To get a bit more granular and maybe a bit more hyper specific, we are finding that like there are some niches where certain financial contract types might be more useful at any given point in time. Just like the KPI option contract template is just one that any DAO literally can just say, hey, this is my metric, I want to launch a KPI option, this is the end date, and that's all the kind of information we really need. Maybe a couple extra parameters. But you know, that template can be launched within the space of 30 minutes, and you can have that set up. You can also kind of think of it from other perspectives, you want to kind of create other financial type products. What are some of the other things? Debt markets are quite an interesting one that UMA's been playing around for like the range and success tokens that we chatted about earlier. The options market has quite a few interesting caveats. A few interesting elements behind it, with the caveat that it's quite hard in DeFi. And so we're looking at all of these very specific spaces for like particular contract template types, because that's what we think users will need. But overall, the vision is still the same.
And I'll just add that in my vision, Aragon and UMA can work closely together, just because I think that the ability to organize people in this governance system, coupled with the ability to create like customized derivatives and customized payout contracts, they just go together really well. So I hope that we have many more of these calls in the future.
Absolutely. Lots of questions. There are lots of questions around what's next for Aragon and UMA, and will the partnership be continuing? And hopefully, I'm allowed to say for all of us that absolutely. I think we've got lots of ideas in the pipeline for DAOs and for Aragon in particular. Ramon, question for you on Aragon Govern, which I'm sure you've heard lots. Where is it multi-chain, and when will it be multi-chain?
Aragon Govern is not yet multi-chain. Of course, we have a mainnet on Rinkeby for people to try it out, but only for Ethereum for now. We started working on this multi-chain approach with all our other products, specifically Aragon Client and Aragon Voice. We will have some news on the next community call about that. For Aragon Govern, we want to start tackling this, but it's a little bit more complex since it also involves Aragon Court, because they are they work quite well, not only well, but they need each other to work. So it's a little bit more complex. We will start working on that towards the end of the year for sure, but don't have any specific roadmap right now. But for client and for voice, pretty soon we'll start having some multi-chain approaches for both.
Brilliant. Excellent. Great news. Question which we actually haven't covered yet, again for you, Ramon, is when is the KPI option going live for Aragon Govern? When will DAOs be able to transition, and is there anything that the community can contribute / add in building functionality, and what would be the best way for them to get involved?
Awesome. We are finishing some small stuff on our side to enable the migration from Aragon Client to Aragon Govern. The KPI options already exist. We are just finishing out the flow to make this a little bit more usable, meaning that it does not require a highly technical person to actually perform the migration and the creation of the Aragon Govern DAO. If anyone is like desperate, really wants to do this today, drop to our Discord channel, look out for me on any of the public channels, send me a message, but it will be quite technical. Otherwise, we do hope that by the next 2-week sprint cycle that we are starting in Aragon, we will have the migration and the KPI option reward, everything up and running, and we are going to communicate this quite a lot for everyone for sure. So, and if you want to contribute, just as with any project that we have, drop to our Discord, send us a message saying, hey, I would really like to contribute to something, and we can chat.
Brilliant, fantastic. And then another question for you, Ramon, is what is in store for the fourth quarter?
What is what? Sorry.
In store for the fourth quarter, roadmap wise.
Fourth quarter. So we are working on this multi-chain approach for all of the products. We are working to improve a little bit the experience on Aragon Client and Aragon Voice, and Aragon Voice plus Aragon Govern as well. And then we are sort of starting to figure out, not sure if it's a new project, but we really want to make the whole experience of using Aragon products way more seamless than it is today. We know we have a lot of solutions nowadays. You go to different products for different stuff, and we want to make something way more easy for anyone to be able to create these digital organizations and like remove this need of being expert in Web3 and in crypto to start like interacting with this new ecosystem.
Brilliant, fantastic. And following my question for Ramon about multi-chain. Chandler and Clayton, another question for you is there any limitations on the UMA, what assets can be put inside the sort of the synthetic assets? Is there any limit on sort of chains, or can any token be added in, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so currently UMA is fully functional on both Ethereum and Polygon, with our own roadmap looking extremely multi-chain as well, and we're busy in the development from that as we speak at the moment. So if you're a DAO on Polygon or Ethereum, you can have that launched relatively quickly. Theoretically, any token can be used as collateral, since we assume that most DAOs would want to use their own natural native token for this. So we do accept virtually every token. One of the caveats with that is that you will need to just approve that token through UMA governance, which is a relatively straightforward process. And in fact, the UMA team can kind of help you out with that. And it's just as Ramon said, reach out to somebody on the Discord, reach out to somebody on UMA's Discord, and we'll do the exact same for you. And then in terms of launching your own KPIs, you can use your own collateral, and then the metric, it's obviously very bespoke. Each team will want their own kind of design and elements that they want to incorporate in that KPI option, that you can kind of reach out to someone on the UMA team to help you figure out what you need to put in place to launch one of these options relatively easily.
Fantastic. Well, we are coming to the end. If anyone, Clayton, Chandler, Ramon, is there anything else you would like to cover quickly before time is up?
I'm just excited to watch Govern roll out. I actually think it's a really interesting proposition that organizations will make decisions and people will have to sort of opt out versus opt in. I just think it's psychologically, it's going to have a different, it's just going to process differently, right? And I think it's going to be interesting to watch. Presumably there's been a lot of resistance associated with needing to vote for every decision. So to have this thing where someone proposes an action and then someone would have to dispute it is just exciting. So I'm just excited for what you guys are building, really excited that we get to be a part of it and get to work together. And yeah, look forward to everything to come in the future.
Well, I have to say the same about UMA in general. Excited to see things move forward for us doing this release, and with all of the other potential ideas that we are going to explore together. But I want to point out just one thing that Clayton just said, sort of this ability to make decisions faster, the resistance of voting for everything. Also, one thing that sometimes I realize talking to people, they face their DAO at this single entity, that everything needs to happen the same way. And it's absolutely not the case. You could have a small part, a fractal part of your DAO that makes decision about certain topics that run in an optimistic way. You can have another part of your DAO that runs with voting. In the end, just like companies, there are levels of responsibilities, levels of permissions that you can have or not, and we really want to see this grow into a more vast ecosystem with different parts interacting with each other. And this is where I think everything that UMA is creating comes so well together, as well as small parts of this big entity that DAOs can become.
Perfect, brilliant. Well, Clayton, Chandler, Ramon, thank you very much for coming. There was one more thing I'll share. Obviously, those of you that submitted questions will pick the top questions and get in touch with you and give you your exclusive NFT. We also have a UMA Aragon NFT as well for anyone who's attended the call today, which you can claim through the QR code here. So feel free to jump on there. But I'll leave that up as we close. But I just want to say, Clayton, Chandler, thank you so much for coming along. I'm really excited to see what happens with UMA and how we progress going forwards. And Ramon, thanks for coming on and talking about governance and talking about how we're using the UMA project as well. I think it's been really interesting, hopefully informative. Hopefully we all know now who UMA are, what Aragon governance is, and what a synthetic asset is, and what KPI options are. Hopefully we've covered everything. If you have any questions, obviously, for the UMA team, feel free to jump on their Discord server. For the Aragon team, feel free to jump on our server or get in touch. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure the UMA team are very happy to answer any questions you have as well going forward. But yeah, I just want to say thanks again for all three of you for joining. It's been really informative. Going forwards for next week, we have another community call, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get notified for that. We'll have lots of Aragon updates on there. But from my side, thank you all for joining. Really enjoyed the discussion and look forward to seeing how things progress going forwards. We'll drop off now, but I will leave the NFT up on the screen so you have time to claim it. But we'll all drop off the screen now, and I look forward to seeing you on the call next week.
Awesome.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, Chandler. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.